talk, fired up and loud. The Wolfpack Nation, we're a hell of a crowd. From the first pitch to the final play, Tuffy talk, let's roll today.
What's going on, Wolfpack Nation? Welcome to another edition here as we are previewing the 2026 NC State football season. This week, we are focusing on the defensive side of the ball. You know, what is it from Remember the Titans, Ethan's left side, strong side? You know, we're going to be breaking all down here today. So with that being said, you got myself, Layton Smith, you got Ethan, and we are so excited to break it down position by position and give you, Wolfpack Nation, all the information you need when it comes to what to expect here on the defensive side of the ball. One of the things that really stood out to me when preparing for this is that the NC State offense is returning about 62% of their production, while the defense is only returning about 46% of its production, which obviously makes sense, losing Brandon Cleveland, Sebastian Hart, Cian Salone, Sean Brown, Caden 46, Caden Fordham. I mean, you lost a lot. You lost a lot of big pieces from last year's team. So would you say, Ethan, that's a red flag, or would you say that with what we've done in the portal that like, kind of, what's your feel here? Like, do you feel like that we're kind of leaning on the side of concern, or do you feel like that we were able to supplement enough in the portal where you're feeling a little bit better maybe than last year's defense?
Well, to me, 46%, it feels high.
Yeah.
That's more than I would have expected in terms of returning, because, I mean, you rattle off those names. Feels like most of your sacks went out the door. Caden Fordham obviously led you in tackles. Devon Marshall was excellent in the secondary for you. So I like that number's better than I would have expected. You talked about it. I do like what they did in the portal. I do. We've talked about a playmaker on each level of the defense. Now, on the flip side, like looking back at last year, I did think they really hit their stride down the stretch. And I think that's one of the things that in this new era of college sports that has changed is like, a lot of times you can see one season bleed into the next where it's like, okay, you can hit your stride down the stretch. And we've seen NC State do that many, many times where they're playing their best football in November, but now you're starting over, and so you may have to take some lumps early, as we saw them do last year, right? Like we saw them, I thought they were much better in November than they were in September. And so I expect the same thing to happen again, where the defense you see in September, they're going to be much better in November. And so I guess the downside is you have to take the lumps a little bit to get there, but I do like the personnel, and yeah, you hope that they can take a step forward from where they were last year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, and I mean, kind of starting to break down this defense here. Really want to start off with a defensive line. Why? Because I feel like that, honestly, you have one of the biggest pieces of recent news affecting this defensive line with KaTron Evans. The story coming out that the NCAA denied his extra year of eligibility waiver. And basically, NC State's actually going through the process of actually suing the NCAA for that year back here. How big of news is this, and how big of a swing do you feel like it is as we start to break down this defensive line, talking about, what other options we have in nose tackle if we're able to get Evans back for another year or not?
I think it hurts you from a depth perspective. I don't know if KaTron Evans was going to start or not. I do think, and we'll get to him, probably like biggest player isn't the phrase I'm looking for, but the most amount of stock I'm looking to buy is actually on Josiah Victor, who, KaTron Evans, theoretically, those would have been your two guys in that middle spot. So I think from a depth perspective, it does hurt. Again, Victor's still very young. He played last year as a true freshman. And so as a sophomore, like now he's your guy. How many snaps can you realistically expect him to play? He, like you said, he hasn't played a ton. He got hurt, missed a few games last year. And so I think you like Evans from that perspective as like, okay, it's another body. He's played before. He knows what to do, because after that, you're playing two even younger guys in Mello McKenzie and Omari and Abraham. So yeah, like it does feel like you're thin there. It does. And so you definitely would rather have him than not. I don't think this is like a make or break injury. Like, I don't think this is like a I don't even want to put another name out there, so I won't do that. But I don't think it's like, I mean, you lose significant players to injury every year. I don't know that I would
Right.
personally that I would put KaTron Evans in that category.
Yeah, I mean, obviously with his experience and definitely his ability. I mean, a guy that's 6'3", 336 definitely fits the perfect mold. I feel like from a build perspective, what you want at a nose
Well, and he's
tackle.
fully
Uh,
developed, like he's like you mentioned, he's
correct.
336. These other guys are still putting that weight on, right? I think they're still in the 300 to 310 range. And it doesn't sound like a lot,
Mhm.
but 20, 25 pounds, like, and being able to maintain your athleticism, like, it's easier to do at 22, 23 than it is at 18, 19.
Do you feel like NC State is handling this any way different because this is coming off of piggybacking off of the Hampton news? Like, so now it's like, okay, now we're really like putting our foot down here and saying, we're gonna try and fight this one.
Yeah, that's a good question. If you're Jalen Hampton, I mean, you hope that you're getting treated the same way. I think that they knew, and they knew
You hope.
with both of these guys that this was a possibility. And I think with Hampton, they probably understood that it was unlikely. And I think Dave talked about that in his press conference. Let me see if I can find the quotes real quick. But I think this is one where they feel like they have a strong case, and that's why you go through the hassle and the expenses of suing. Like I don't think you
Right.
do this if you feel like you don't have a chance. I think that to me that's
Right.
probably the biggest difference. He said it's not a surprise, but it is disappointing. So we made plans with him and we've made plans without him. So we knew when we signed him we needed a waiver. So um, and then he said, okay, so then the next question was Jalen Hampton. He said every case is different. His case was more of a long shot in our opinion. So they knew going in, like, okay, Jalen Hampton is going to be tough getting him eligible, and that was the way it played out. And so KaTron Evans, I think they feel better, and that's why you take the approach on that one and not Hampton.
Yeah. Well, now kind of switching it over though, Ethan, to Josiah Victor, who you said you would definitely buy a lot of stock in. A guy who is only a sophomore. He came into NC State as a three-star recruit. Uh Played not a significant amount, which obviously you expect with a guy like Brandon Cleveland on the roster, but definitely played, a handful for sure here.
Mhm.
And in my opinion, he's going into the season, especially if Evans can't play. I could argue one of the top two, maybe top two, top three most important players on this football roster going into next year if Evans can't play.
Most important, yeah. I mean, it's hard to argue just
Yeah.
because again, Abraham and McKenzie behind him, like, you really don't know. Um, and
Mhm.
so, yeah, like, I don't know. That feels aggressive, but at the same time, I don't know that I have a rebuttal, to be honest. Um,
Exactly.
and
It's just
yeah.
it it's just crazy to think about, and especially putting all that weight, all that, burden too on a sophomore to not only stay productive, but stay healthy as well too. Gosh forbid he goes down, then you're really scraping the bottom of the barrel there down the middle,
Yeah.
and offenses would take advantage of that.
Yeah. So Victor played, he played 96 snaps last year. So obviously you had
Yep.
Cleveland. They also had Chaz Wallace. Who again, like, Victor's probably better than Chaz Wallace, but Wallace played more because he was in year 5, I think, and Victor's in year 1, And
Mhm.
again, Victor missed some time, but um, yeah, he missed 4 games. He didn't play in 4 games, only played 4 snaps against you. Like, he only played 11% of the snaps there. So look, the NC State can think he's really good, but it does feel like it's probably a year too early to be going all in on him. That's why you land Evans. That's why I think you can sit here and wonder why didn't you take another guy? I think that's a valid question to ask.
Yeah. Now, looking at the rest of the defensive line here, I think Isaiah Shirley, your presumptive starter there on the defensive tackle spot. Uh, let's see, Joseph Aguirre as well, probably presumptive edge starter. Who would you peg on the other side?
Well, I think it's probably those two guys. Like if I had to guess, your first three-man set is those three: Shirley, Aguirre, and Victor. Um,
Mhm.
and again, I think State, is kind of looking for the same approach out of these three guys. Like you're not necessarily going to see huge sack totals or TFLs. I think that's more from your edge rushers in Harvey Dyson and Sterling Dixon, who obviously we'll get to. I think you're looking for these guys to take up space, to occupy blockers, to hold double teams, to keep the linebackers free. And I think that's what you're looking for from this group. Again, Aguirre, has flashed a little bit last year, has produced at Texas Tech, so maybe you expect a little more production out of him. I think those are the three guys, though. And
Mhm.
then again, after that, it's guys who haven't really played. I mean, Chase Bond played a little bit last year. I think he had a sack or two. But Colby Cronk hasn't played. AJ Prim didn't play last year. I mean, those are the names you're talking about.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I mean, and one guy though, which obviously kind of broke the internet a little bit with breaking the NC State football power clean record, and Colby Cronk here too as well. I mean, he's a guy coming out of high school that NC State was very, very high on, and definitely I think breaking a power clean record. Ethan, when you think about some of the beasts that have come through NC State football, I mean, Catavia Street's one name I think of who
Mhm.
squatted 700 pounds here, but does that maybe kind of signify that, okay, maybe it's time to see a little bit more about what Colby Cronk has? Because obviously, from a weight room perspective, he's giving you what you need.
And he did that as a sophomore too, as like a young like
It's
early in his
crazy.
sophomore year. Yeah. Yeah, like he's definitely another name. I mean, State's gonna like we're talking names here. And we're kinda like, "Oh, well, I don't know who the 4th guy, the 5th guy is." All these guys are gonna play. We're gonna know who they are,
Oh yeah.
by the end of October, and so, yeah, Kronk's in the mix for sure. You athletically, you hope he stands out, and I would think, like, a couple of these guys are gonna break out, and you're gonna feel pretty good about them head into next season. You are pretty young at this group. Shirley, I believe, is out of eligibility. No, Shirley still has 1 more year after this.
One more
Um
year. Yeah.
and AJ Prim still
Mhm.
has another year. So Aguirre out of this group is the only guy that's out of eligibility. It kind of reminds me of the safety position last year, where you were like, okay, we're playing a bunch of young guys and they're kind of taking their lumps, but a year later you look at it and you're like, hey, we've got three or four guys that we feel good about who have played. So again, it feels like you're a year early on the defensive line, but like you said, if you can feel really good about Victor, feel good about Kronk, feel good about a couple other guys here headed into next season, then I think you hope to see that progression over the course of the season, and then again feel good about that group going into next year.
Yeah. So I mean, just kind of wrapping the defensive line up in terms of talking kind of overall here. I mean, looking at this defensive line, it definitely raises a lot of eyebrows and concern, especially if Evans turns out to not be eligible, which obviously, with how suing the NCAA has gone recently, it has a pretty good percentage chance of actually winning sometimes, but to be determined there. So, but I think that's definitely going to be a big swing either way if Evans is able to play or not. But looking at the rest of it here, it's definitely looking like Isaiah Shirley, who keep in mind, coming in his freshman year, actually stepped in and played a lot on the tight end side as a
I
blocking
forgot
tight
about
end,
that. Yeah,
and now
yeah.
yeah, and now here he is, looking at him saying, "All right, Isaiah, like we need you to be a pretty big producer here on the defensive line here, especially when you look at what last year's defensive line was with Sion Salone, with Brandon Cleveland, with Sebastian Harsh." So, definitely on the concern meter here for me is pretty high, especially because I feel like the NC State defense, when it's producing its best is when we're able to get pressure on the quarterback. And obviously, we'll talk about the linebackers here. There's a lot of options that can help with pass rush, but to me, looking at Josiah Victor, KaTron Evans, there in the middle, we need some strong play there up the middle specifically.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how much production from a numbers perspective you're gonna get from this group, but I also, like, I don't view that as a knock. Like, I don't think NC State's defense is designed for this group. I think I mentioned this earlier, to come away with 8 sacks, 10 sacks, 12 sacks. Like, you're looking for that from your outside linebackers. Now, last year NC State did have Sloan and Harsh listed as defensive ends, I believe. And this year, Harvey Dyson and Sterling Dixon are listed as linebackers. So I think that's sort of a hybrid of morphing your roster to fit DJ Elliott's system. There's a little bit of an in between there. So again, I don't necessarily look at it and say, well, if Victor and Aguirre don't combine for 8 sacks, then NC State's defense isn't going to be good. I think these guys can still be okay to solid, even if the numbers aren't there. But the production's going to have to come from the outside linebackers. And if you want to throw those guys in, obviously we're talking about them separately, but if you are including those guys in the defensive line discussion, then I think that conversation looks much different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, kind of transitioning, it's funny, Ethan. It seems like every single, maybe every couple years they come up with a new like linebacker name position here, and the Jack linebacker position is a new one here. But Harvey Dyson and Sterling Dixon on the roster are kind of fitting those molds here. Obviously, Harvey Dyson, when you look at the defense as a whole, I probably project him to hopefully be the biggest name that we talk about here on the defensive side. I mean,
Yeah.
he definitely is coming in that way. I mean, a guy that played at Tulane, had 8 sacks last year, 11 and a half tackles for loss last year. A guy that's really, really elite in terms of rushing the passer. And also to a guy that, again, uh, played with the football team that was playing an extremely high level enough to make it to the college football playoffs here. So, when we talk about the issues that or concerns you have on the defensive line, you look at Harvey Dyson saying that's the guy that
That's your
could,
guy. Yeah.
you know, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Agree. And again, you brought him in out of the portal, like maybe the highest paid guy on the defense. Maybe, I don't know. Probably up there. If not, I would guess it's probably him and Brian Nelson. And so, yeah, like when I'm sitting here saying, all right, well, if you don't get production from the defensive line, it's not the end of the world. Well, if you don't get production from Harvey Dyson, it is probably the end of the world, right? Because then it's like, okay, where is this going to come from? You brought him in to produce, to be your guy, to be your star guy, basically. Like, and I don't want to compare him to other players who have had big seasons, because I think he's in a different role than a Peyton Wilson or a Drake Thomas or a Jermaine Pratt or Bradley Chubb. Like, he's not being asked to do the same things that those guys were doing. So I don't want to sit here and compare those. But again, you rattle off the numbers from last year: 11 and a half sacks, 11 and a half tackles for loss, 8 sacks. That's really, really strong production. That's very strong production.
Mhm.
And yeah, like in a different setting, like you need that from him. You need that to be replicated, because again, you don't know what you're getting from other pieces. And so um yeah, like Dyson is the guy, and I do think Sterling Dixon is another guy that State really likes. Like, he came from Alabama. I believe he was banged up most of last season, um, and again, like, you're not going to make it through the season with one pass rusher, right? You need multiple, and then you need depth as well. So Dixon's going to factor in there as well, but again, those are the guys you have circled to say this is where our havoc needs to come from. If we're going to create turnovers, if we're going to get pressure on the quarterback, those are the guys that you're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, Sterling Dixon, a guy that came into, NC State actually out of high school. He was the number 23 overall edge rush, recruit, 4-star recruit, given a 90 rating, on 24/7 here. So again, very highly recruited, ended up at Alabama, and then spent last year at NC State, played a little bit, but like you said, was very banged up, so didn't get really much, if any, playing time last year. But a guy that's a redshirt sophomore compared to Harvey Dyson, who's a redshirt senior. So he's a guy that I definitely see as a potential of, all right, like this could be one of our guys that spends 3 years at NC State, because I feel like that if you're looking at it here, it definitely makes sense if things work out properly. If Dixon plays his part this year, that Dixon can be one of the guys for next year's NC State football roster. Do you see that happening?
I think you need Dixon this year. Like, yeah, for next year, sure.
Well, being the guy, yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
he'll be
maybe.
involved for
Right,
sure.
right. Um, yeah, and so Dyson is out of eligibility. I don't know, like I know I brought up next year. That's my fault. We're still focused on 2026, but yeah, like again, last year you had Sloan and Harsh, right? Like you had two guys, and I think you probably feel like you need two. Like you had two who were very impactful. You also had Caden Fordham in the middle. Like again, when we're talking about other spots where it's like, okay, I don't know. Like I do think state, like if you're gonna put, let's say you put Harvey Dyson down for 8 sacks, right? Like let's just go ahead and do that. I still think you need a
Yeah.
second guy in the 4, 5, 6 range who's consistently creating pressure. Is it Sterling Dixon? Could it be somebody on the defensive line? It could be added array,
Yeah.
you know. It's a lot for Josiah Victor. Like again, you don't expect that from a defensive tackle. You don't expect 4, 5, 6 sacks. But could it be those guys? I think Sterling Dixon's as good of a candidate as anybody. And the other thing that I would throw out there is I thought last year Sloan and Harsh, they they were in the backfield a ton and their sack numbers didn't necessarily reflect that. Like I think their pressure rate was much higher than their sack rate. And so that's something I'm going to be looking at, right? Like felt like every play those two guys, one of those two guys was in the backfield, but State just didn't finish a ton of sacks. So that's something I'm looking
Yeah.
at this year. Can NC State do a better job of finishing sacks, finishing TFLs? And again, like last year, I thought that was somewhere where they left a little meat on the bone, so to speak. Let me pull up their sack numbers here real quick. State had 20 sacks, and as a team, Fordham had 3.5, Sebastian Harsh had 2.5, and where did Sloan had 1.5. It just felt like they were in the
Wow.
backfield a lot more than that, didn't it?
A lot. Oh, 100%. No, it seemed like they were dominant, especially early in the season. They were
Yeah.
really, really popping off versus ECU Virginia specifically.
Yeah. Okay, so here's an example. Sloan had 6.5. This is from State's website. 6.5 TFLs, 1.5 sacks, but 16 quarterback hurries, right? Harsh was 13 quarterback hurries, 7.5 TFLs, but only 2.5 sacks. Now you compare that to Trey Thomas, who had 5 quarterback hurries, but turned it into 4 sacks. Trevally Price had 4 quarterback hurries, 3.5 sacks. Fordham, mention him, 4 quarterback hurries, 3.5 sacks. So that's something I'm looking at. Can you turn those quarterback hurries into more sacks and create those
Mhm.
negative plays, put teams behind the chains? That's how you create turnovers too, right? You're much more likely to create turnovers getting in the backfield, getting in the face of the quarterback, whether it's a fumble, whether it's an interception. If the quarterback's got a clean pocket, I don't like my chances of forcing a turnover, right?
100% agree. Yeah, no, definitely. Well, and especially too, I feel like that at times last season, it was almost like the offenses we were going against were almost scheming around Harsh and Salone in terms of really staying away and almost even challenging Cleveland up the middle. And the linebackers just because Harsh and Salone would some points last season were playing elite. We're playing incredible last season, to say the least. So I mean, and maybe that's part of the reason why they have all these hurries, but not sacks, is that basically the quarterback almost has like eyes in the back of his head, once he sees Harsh and Salone coming around the edge, then he's popping up, and then there's Fordham or Cleveland or Brown there to finish the job. But again, I mean, looking at the rest of this linebacking roster here, Ethan, and this is honestly for me what I'm most excited about here for the season here is that, we already talked about Dixon and Dyson, what they're able to bring. But I mean, some of these other guys like Popo Aguirre, AJ Richardson, Dakari Nelson, one of our two transfers from Penn State here, uh, all guys that I'm feeling very, very bullish on for sure. I mean, Popo coming from Miami, senior year definitely feels like he has a chip on his shoulder this year. And then the guy in Dakari Nelson, who coming out of high school was a 4-star recruit, borderline top 100 recruit, a guy that's again been a part of the James Franklin system for 4 years. So, he's, been developed, in a positive manner there, and he's played and been a part of some pretty big ball, and now he's come to NC State, as a depth option. And so, I'm looking at between Dixon, Popo, AJ, and Dakari Nelson. Any of those four guys is, hey, if we're able to get, you know, meaningful production there, then, watch out. And a lot of experience there too as well that I really, really think is going to be beneficial as the season goes on here. So, between Popo, I mean, I know from hearing you talk before about Popo, a guy you're pretty excited about, but AJ Richardson, a guy that came from Norfolk State, showed some signs of positive play, but was banged up last season. Do you feel like, AJ, Dakari, both redshirt juniors, do you see one of those two that you're more bullish on for this upcoming season?
Yeah, well, just real quick on Dixon. Do you think he like State's listing him as an outside linebacker? So are you throwing him in with the inside guys?
No, so
Okay.
well, just basically because Dyson's gonna be the guy. Dyson's gonna be the guy, period. And now you need Dixon for sure to be involved, but also too as well. I mean, you're like because basically kind of how I look at it is okay, you got, what is it? Basically what? So because it's 3-3-5, so you got three other linebacker spots here. So, which one's gonna play the big piece here. So no, like, basically I put basically Dyson and Dixon as like in their own jack spot, and
Yeah.
then
Okay.
these other guys, Popo, AJ, and Dakari,
Yeah.
as your middle outside linebacker
That's kind of the
options.
way I view it too. Yeah. I think, it's weird. I can't believe I'm saying this. Drake Thomas has been gone for 4 years now. I like that does not feel real to me. But,
Mhm.
the reason I bring that up is in terms of duo, like State's had some unbelievable linebacker seasons. Obviously Peyton
Oh,
Wilson
yeah.
in 23, um, Caden Fordham last year. Uh, but in terms of a duo, I don't feel like they've had a great duo since Drake Thomas when they had all three of those guys. Now, obviously Peyton Wilson was hurt, so in 21 it was mostly just Drake and Isaiah Moore.
Mhm.
Um, but I kind of want like I think Aguirre and Richardson could be that best duo over the last few years. Like, will you have the individual, the single player excellence that you had like in 23 with Peyton Wilson? Obviously, like that's a Mount Rushmore individual season at NC State. But like, will one of
Yeah.
those guys have that type of season, or even like a Caden Fordham type of season last year? I don't necessarily think so, but I think in terms of two guys, I think you could have two guys that are as strong as you've had in recent. I mean, again, going back to 21, I guess, and it's been
Yeah.
5 years now. I can't believe that. So yeah, I'm very bullish on Aguirre. Richardson, I'm bullish on too. I think that's a guy who, at least for me, headed into last year, um, I kind of thought he could beat out Sean Brown or Caden Fordham down the stretch. And obviously, it didn't
Yeah.
play out that way. AJ Richardson got hurt, so did Sean Brown, and Caden Fordham was awesome. I think he's a guy who kind of came in under the radar, was really, really good at Norfolk State, still has 2 years left. State made a concerted effort to get him on the field. Before he got hurt, he was playing. They brought him back from injury late in the year. I think that's a guy people are sleeping on. I think he's a guy who could put together a big season. We've talked about Aguirre as well. I think the two of those
Yeah.
guys, I think you're in again, they have to stay healthy, but I think between the two of those guys, I think State's probably going to be in pretty good shape there.
Yeah. Now, Dakari Nelson, though, for me is an interesting name here that I want to talk a little bit more about, just because during his time at Penn State, I mean, over the last 2 seasons, he's only been involved in a handful of games, so definitely been a depth rotation option at Penn State here. Now comes to NC State, I'm sure piggybacking probably a lot of, how, James Franklin, getting let go of Penn State. So don't know if that was the only reason, but I'm sure probably only playing in a handful of games over the last 2 seasons probably doesn't help didn't help the case for him to stay at Penn State either. But now comes to NC State here. Do you feel like, he's a guy that also too is probably going to come into NC State here with a chip on his shoulder and coming to NC State with the expectation, the hope that he's going to play significant time this season.
Yeah, I think he has that hope. I'm sure like that's why you pick a like you don't pick a place and say, "Oh, I'm going there to sit on the bench." Like so
Sure.
I don't know. Like I think he was primarily, I know you mentioned he primarily a special teams guy at Penn State. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Like I don't have super high expectations for Nelson, but again, you've got to stay healthy, and you've talked about like what's behind these guys. We don't really know. We don't really know, and so I think Nelson can certainly play his way into snaps. I don't think there's a situation where it's like, all right, there's more guys in front of him. Like there are positions where it's hard to see this guy getting on the field. I don't necessarily feel that way about Nelson. LaCorian Hodge played some last year, so I'm sure State likes him. Um, like other than that, though, yeah, I think Nelson can definitely carve out a role. Again, I don't know what that looks like because I think if Aguirre and Richardson stay healthy, then I think they're going to play the majority of the snaps. But that doesn't mean there's not a role for Nelson. And again, like being willing to be flexible, I think that's the biggest thing with this defense is, you called it a 3-3-5, right? And okay, we had the 3-3-5 with Tony Gibson, but Tony Gibson was a very like, this is our 3-3-5 defense. We are not changing it. We are going to run our defense our way.
Mhm.
DJ Elliott is much more flexible, where it's like, okay, well, we'll do this on this play, and then we'll switch it up on that play, and then we're going to go back to this, or here we're going to do something new here. So he's much more flexible. I know Dave Doran talked about that when they hired him as a guy who they call it multiple fronts, who's much more open to stuff like that. So I think that allows for guys like Dakari Nelson to find something that they're good at and earn snaps that way. But yeah, I mean, he'll probably be on the two deep. If I had to guess, he'll probably be on the two deep and have opportunities for if Aguirre or Richardson either go down or aren't playing well.
Yeah. So switching on over here though to the cornerbacks, obviously you feel extremely good, like you said, about one guy and Brian Nelson, who, like you said, is probably definitely top two highest paid players on the defense this year.
Mhm.
Guys are redshirt junior, but then outside of that, you got my guy here in Ondre Evans, you got uh Ty White, Caden Gordon there. But then at the even nickel, you got Cy Brown, Jackson Vick here. Uh, if you were to put money right now, Ethan, on one guy, who do you think is going to be starting against Virginia on the other side of the ball, opposite of Brian Nelson?
Your guy.
Let's go.
Yeah, I think it'll be Ondre Evans. I don't know, like, you mentioned Ty White. State has him listed at nickel. You have Jackson Vick inside there as well. But yeah, I really, I mean, you've been talking about Ondre Evans all off season, I think, and yeah, like I like he's now an upperclassman. He's now a junior. He was in the mix at Georgia, which is always something that you look for. Like the competition, Jaren Sensabaugh, Caden Gordon played a little bit last year. But yeah, I think it's Evans. I think State has done a good job. Um, finding corners in the portal, and you go back to Devon Marshall, I guess, where it's like, okay, year one, it's like the role is a little bit of a lesser role because there's either guys in front of them or they're just getting it, easing into the system, I guess. But this year, you don't have a second guy. You don't have somebody who you're like, okay, we can ease Ondre Evans in. Well, you're like, okay, down the stretch, you can earn some snaps. You don't really have that option this year. It's like somebody's got to go out there and sink or swim. Um, and cornerback again is a position where you play a lot of guys. Last year, State played 3 corners. Due to injury, but also, when you're on passing downs, you're putting more DBs out there. So I like Ondre Evans. Jaren Sensabaugh, was hurt last year. Another guy, Caden Gordon, like 3 of those guys are gonna, well, 2 of those 3, I should say, are gonna play a ton because we know Brian Nelson will obviously. But yeah, you ask me right now, I'm picking Ondre Evans.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, obviously, I definitely would love to see that. Honestly, uh, I'll have to go pull that clip, Ethan, from the live stream that you and I did, where I had pulled out my hot take about
Yeah,
Ondre Evans, and I'll
yeah.
have to timestamp it and be like, "Look at my guy!"
Because what did
Like,
I
you know, I
say?
called it months ago, baby.
Yeah, yeah. What did I
Well,
say? I think I really liked that at the time, and,
yeah. Well, no, you said because it was like a hot take, and I
how
was
hot
like,
is the take?
let me know, Ethan, how spicy it was from 1 to 10, and I think my take was something like that. Ondre Evans would be the most impactful defensive player outside of Harvey Dyson,
Okay.
for this upcoming season,
I
and
can
you were
see it.
like,
Yeah, I can see it. Again, like, somebody's gotta be that second quarterback. It's not gonna be me or you, you know? So, it's gotta be somebody.
"Yeah,
It's gotta be somebody, and
yeah,
I don't really
yeah,
see why it can't be Ondre Evans. NC State has loved Ondre Evans for years, dating back to his recruitment, and so I know that they are, they're pumped to have him on their roster finally, and, we'll look for him to have a big season.
yeah." So now looking at, though, the other 2 names there, Jackson Vick, a guy that NC State fans a name that NC State fans should know for sure, and then Assad Brown, who, saw significant playing time, at different points due to injury. Pitt game, if I'm remembering correctly, Ethan, the Pitt game at one point, I believe, like, 4 out of the 5 defensive back starters were freshmen, due to injuries here, and, or freshmen or sophomores here, and Assad Brown was one of them here. Uh, Besides Brian Nelson and Ondre Evans, who we're both, very high on here, do you see there's one more name on this list here that NC State fans, should buy a lot of stock in on the cornerback side of the ball?
Who, King Mack?
Oh, duh. Well, oh, sorry. No,
Oh,
no, no. Just
just
cornerback.
corners?
Not we're not safety yet.
I think you covered him. I mean, and Assad Brown, I mean, they have him listed at safety right now. We'll see. I do think that's something they
Mm,
like, is being able to move guys around, and sometimes you don't really have a choice. Um,
yeah, yeah.
and so, yeah,
So,
I not really. Like, to me, it's Evans, Sensabaugh, Caden Gordon. Like, to me, those are the 3 guys right now.
yeah. But let's switch on over though to the safety side now, and start with our guy King Mack. A guy that I don't know if it's a Twitter account, Ethan, but I've seen a lot of talk, or like some tweets from time to time of like the best names in college football or whatever it may be, whether it's funny or just cool, whatever. But King Mack, I mean, got to be up there for one of the coolest names in college football for this upcoming season here. But again, a true senior guy, Penn State transfer, and really, I think outside of Harvey Dyson, in terms of from a what you should expect bringing in a guy like this, King Mack, I think definitely fits that mold here. Definitely is fitting a big hole there for sure. Being the one true full-on senior upperclassman that's in the safety room here. So I think that it seems like to me like Coach Doran, DJ Elliott here are putting a lot of chips here on King Mack. Would you say it's a fair gamble, a fair risk here, Ethan?
Yeah, I mean, again, we talked about 3 playmakers at every level that they brought in out of the portal, and Mack is that guy at the defensive back. Now, obviously, you have Brian Nelson, but, you brought him in last year, so I'm not including him in that conversation. So, yeah, like, you brought Mack in from Penn State, started 8 games there. I think it was 40, 50 tackles, somewhere in that range. Like, you expect him to come in and be a guy for you. I'm
Yeah.
blanking on who was the safety a couple years ago that came in from Auburn late. You remember who I'm talking about? Let me see if I
From
can find his name real
Auburn.
quick. Yeah, he transferred in very late, and then
Yeah.
he ended up being, like, State's best guy on defense. I got it right here.
You
It
was gonna
was
say, you think I would know that name.
DK Kaufman. Like, I wonder if you're looking
DK
for, like,
Kaufman.
a similar type of impact from Kaufman. Now, Kaufman made a ton of impact type of plays, havoc plays. I don't know if King Mack is necessarily that type of guy, but I think there's other guys here. Like, this is probably my favorite position group on the defense, because we talked about it with the defensive line. It's like, okay, you're gonna have to play these young guys, and hopefully that pays off down the road. Well, that's what you've done with safety. You did play the young guys last year. You did play Brody Barnhart probably before he was ready. You did play Assad Brown. You did have to play Tristan Teasdale. You did have to play Ronnie Royal. Well, now those guys have taken those lumps. Now they're upperclassmen. Barnhart's a junior. Royal's a junior. So you expect those guys to take steps forward. I think State would be, knock on wood, I think State would be okay without King Mack here because of the lumps those guys have taken. Now, you want King Mack, and I think it's great that State brought him in, but I do think they have the depth in terms of guys who have played for you, who have started, who have played a ton of snaps. You have that at safety. You have that. I mean, you go 4 or 5 deep in terms of guys who have played real snaps at this level, and now they're upperclassmen. So you expect, again, those lumps they took last year, you expect those to pay off now.
Yeah. Well, and kind of looking big picture here too as well. The thing I love a ton about this defense is that there's a great mix between, definitely some senior leadership with King Mack and Dyson definitely fitting that mold, and obviously even Isaiah Shirley, who represented NC State at Media Day. But you also too have a lot of really upside guys here. Again, Ondre Evans, a guy that's really nobody outside of NC State really knows about, but was a guy that was highly recruited out of high school, went to Georgia, and now he's coming to NC State, and nobody's seen him play on the field for 3 years. So big upside there. Josiah Victor on the defensive tackle, big upside there. Ronnie Royal, big upside. So, for me, this defense, and it goes back to the initial question that starts this episode here, is that nobody truly knows how this defense is going to be until August 29th when they play Virginia. Very, uh, you know, probably, a team that's definitely going to challenge NC State defensively right out the gate. And it could be, I think, a defense that's a top 4 to 6 defense in the ACC easily. It definitely has that capability there. But also too as well, it's gotta see what it all looks like when it comes together here, because just like you said, I think that looking at the linebackers and looking at the specifically the safeties, but defensive backs in general with Brian Nelson, those are the 2 areas of the defense you're gonna really, rely on to get the job done here.
Yeah. I don't know. 4 to 6 seems high to me. I I don't know. Like maybe. I think if Harvey Dyson has a big year, and Brian Nelson has a big year, I could see it getting there. You're right. Virginia's going to challenge him right out of the gate. I don't think Virginia's going to be as good at quarterback this year as they were last year.
Yeah.
So that's good. I thought Chandler Morris was excellent for them. But it's a test. Like, you're used to opening up with an FCS team or ECU
Right.
or somebody of that ilk, and you're not. You're getting right into it this year. So yeah, like I don't know. Like, to me, the way I view it, and I know I felt like I was kind of hard on the offense, and I'm more optimistic about the defense. But I think for me, that's also relative to expectations. Like, I think the offense, you've built this roster to be better on offense, and so I do think, like, okay, like you kind of need the offense to score 31, 35 points a game, 38. Go win some shootouts for me. Defensively, I don't necessarily feel that way. I don't feel like you have to hold teams to 17 points to win. So if you give up 24, if you give up 28, if you give up 31, I don't know that I'm viewing that as the end of the world. What I'm looking for is opportunities to give the offense chances to win the game for you. And I thought, by and large, last year, I thought they did that. Like, I know the
Yeah.
defense didn't jump off the page, but even you look at, like, the Notre Dame game, I think it was 36-7. Like, the defense hung in there for a half. They did, and they gave you a
Yeah,
chance.
they tried.
The offense,
Mhm.
the offense didn't score, but the defense kept you in the game. You look at, like,
Yeah.
forcing turnovers in games, right? They did that. They got better down the stretch. So I don't know. At least for me, like, expectations are higher on offense, and so
Sure.
I don't know. Like,
Well, but also too, I think a lot of that though too is tied to the importance of the quarterback position compared to any position really on the linebacker side though too. Or sorry, in
yeah,
any position on the defensive side of the ball though too though. That'd be the one pushback I would say. But also too though, I mean, in the fact of like, listen, like kind of what we're saying with CJ Bailey and the fact of like, listen, like, we shouldn't lose any games because of CJ. With the defensive side of the ball, just like you said, just keep us in it. We're
Mhm.
not asking you to be Superman, hold them to 17, 14 points or less a game. Just keep us in games, give us opportunities, make a stop where you can, and and then CJ should take care of the rest. Now, with that being said, though, again, you still have guys that can make plays though on the defensive side of the ball. Again, Harvey Dyson, King Mack, Brian Nelson, our guy Josiah Victor, even has the potential and the capabilities for sure to make plays here. So that's why I'm looking at this team because I feel like that, and again, this could be 100. It could be 100%. Red sunglasses. Completely understand that here, but I'm looking at the offensive side. I'm looking at the defensive side. There's not really an area where I'm like, holy smokes, like, like man, like we're gonna not feeling good about this position at all. I don't really feel like I really have that position for NC
Some
State
people would
football
say the
this year.
defensive line. You don't think it's that?
No, just because of the fact of like you said, like I think there's upside guys there, but also too as well. I mean, I put a lot of stock in who's coaching them too as well. And like, this is a guy that's coached defensive line, at the highest level for, a long, long time
Who,
here. So for
Wiles?
sure. Yeah, Charlie
Charlie Wiles.
Wiles.
So Wiles actually
So
moved into a support staff role. So like, I'm sure he's still there and helping. Like I don't know.
right.
So, um,
No,
but you're right. Like he's
what
definitely a
I mean,
highly regarded guy. Yeah.
yeah, what and again, like, support staff is even Ruffin McNeil is in a support staff role, but he wouldn't be there for as long as he did if he wasn't making an impact,
Right.
in a way. And so with Charlie Wiles having 30 years of experience, coaching defensive line, he's in the conversations for sure. Like if they didn't want him a part of it, he wouldn't even be on the staff at all. But you're whoever it is, like obviously defensive line coach now, he's part of these conversations here. You'd be crazy not to ask for his opinion there on it. And but yeah, no, absolutely. But kind of looking at though, just kind of final question here, Ethan, to kind of wrap it up here. What would you say is going to be one I guess what's the biggest strength that you feel like this defense has? And what would you say if you're an opposing offense, Virginia game 1, what would you say the biggest weakness is that you would look to take advantage of?
I think the biggest strength is the star power. I think Harvey Dyson, like
Mhm.
again, the 8 sacks coming from Tulane, double digit
Yep.
TFLs. I'd throw Brian Nelson out there. Like you need him to take a step forward, but again, he's still a young guy. Like what year is Brian Nelson? Uh he's a
Redshirt junior?
yeah, he's a senior. Yeah, so he's in year
Junior,
4.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So he's still got another year after this, right? I would
Right.
kinda throw him in that category, and then I think you're gonna get somebody out of the
Mhm.
linebacker position. Either
Yeah,
Aguirre or Richardson, where I think we're gonna look back at the end of the season and say, "Man, that guy had a great, great season. He was a star for NC State."
yeah,
To me, it's those guys, and to me, that's always the question. It's like, okay, who are your playmakers gonna be? Who's gonna create your havoc? Who's gonna create turnovers? And to me, I think you know the answer to that question, or you feel like you should know the answer to that question. So,
yeah,
for me, that's the biggest strength. Biggest weakness, I I wish they had gone a little heavier in the portal at some spots, and I compare what they did in the portal on offense, where I think they brought in 13 guys on offense and only 5 on defense. Like, to me,
yeah.
another cornerback would do wonders. Another defensive lineman. I know they brought in KaTron Evans, but Dave said we talked
Mhm.
about it, like, Dave knew that was you knew that was the
That was a possibility.
possibility.
Yep.
Another defensive line, like, just to make you feel a little bit better about the guys that you're running out there and, guys who have played. Like, I don't think you need a warm body at those positions, but, could you get somebody who has played like a Dakari Nelson, like a offensively, like a Davion Gauss. Like Davion Gauss, that running back, like, he's not a superstar, but, like, he's been a role player for a couple of years. Like, could you have found somebody like that on the defensive line? So I think they're going to be relying on too many young guys a little too early. But I mean, that's the nature of college football, right? And that's just kind of the way it goes.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't necessarily blame State for that, but I think they'll feel it in some points as they kind of did last year. But like we said, you take those lumps and then moving forward, you grow from them and get better.
Well, and like you said too as well, I mean, I do agree for sure that defensive line is not one I'm feeling overly bullish on for sure. Now, I don't think it's, just scraps basically there running the show there from the defensive line side. Now, with that being said, though, you even said it. I feel like honestly we could have gotten by without King Mack, and went with a Ronnie Royal, Barnhart, and been just fine. I'd rather have invested those funds in going after another defensive lineman's, depth piece there at the very least. Especially just like you said, if Doran didn't know, which he did say he did know, there's a possibility that Evans would not be able to play. So that way, it's not seeming like a big issue. Is if Victor goes down, okay, now we're really concerned for sure. But again, if Victor can stay healthy, then I think this defensive line will be able to play its part. So again, hindsight's 2020. There's reasons for it. Obviously, the market, I'm sure, for defensive linemen is probably pretty high compared to the other
Yeah,
positions
yeah,
on defense. Would
that's
you
part
would
of
you
it.
agree with
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, and again, like, I don't wanna sit here and discuss the look back at the roster management and critique that, like, it's hard, and certainly we do that in the off season. So now to me, the roster is your roster, and let's evaluate what you have, but you're right, adding guys like that in the portal it's hard,
It's
it's
not cheap.
hard, like,
Yeah.
I don't I certainly don't take that for granted. So it's easy for me to sit here and say, "Oh, well, you should have grabbed X, you should have grabbed Y." It's not that easy. It's not that easy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then luckily enough, the nice thing too, as well, to kind of wrap this up here, is the nice thing is that honestly, we feel so bullish on what we have at linebacker that linebackers could easily, for sure, supplement some of the issues that we might have on the defensive line side, for sure. There's a lot more that you can do from a linebacker perspective in terms of movement, schemes, you name it, to support the defensive line more than if it was the other way around and you're asking the linebackers to supplement the defensive back side, in my opinion, like especially with the run game. Like that's why honestly, when we were so dominant in 2021, 2022, etc., it wasn't necessarily because defensive line was elite, which, I mean, it had some really high pieces in Devin Van, for example, but the play that you got from Drake Thomas, Peyton Wilson, Isaiah Moore is what really piggybacked a lot of that uh success that you saw. So again, that's the hope for sure, is that the NC State defensive staff, Coach Doran said, listen, we feel so good of what we have and what we can get from a price perspective, a linebacker. I'd rather invest in that than, like you said, go after one stud on the defensive line side. And now, yes, you feel better about defensive line, but now
Yeah,
once again, you don't have as much depth as you may
yeah.
have liked. So,
You're
like you said,
robbing
Ethan,
Peter to pay
it's
Paul, like, it's one of those
exactly.
things, like,
It's
you got a
Yep.
limited
No,
budget.
it
You gotta
you got a limited budget.
yeah, you gotta figure out
Yep.
where you
You
wanna
gotta choose
spend, and
wisely.
you gotta figure out the other part of this too, like, you gotta figure out where do you develop well, right? Like, where would you sit here and say, "Hey, we do a good spot." So if we get cheap production at position X, what position is that most likely to be with our internal development? You could make the case that's defensive
Yeah,
line, where State does such a good job
yeah,
developing guys. You could make that case, and then it's okay. We'll let it ride with those guys and understand that, we're taking a gamble, but you gotta gamble somewhere, and if we feel like we do a good
that's
job
right.
there relative to other positions, then, like, I don't think State did a good job at, like, for a few years, they had a struggles at linebacker, to be honest. Like, they had
Yeah,
Peyton Wilson and Drake Thomas, but Caden Fordham's really the only impactful high school linebacker they've signed since then. I mean, and that was a long time ago
right,
now. And so that's a
right.
position where, hey, we didn't do great at the high school, out of high school there. So we do have to go into the portal. Same thing at cornerback, since Aiden White. You landed Devon Marshall out of the portal. You landed Brian Nelson, so I think that's part of it. And I think certainly that you can make a strong case that State took the right approach there. based off of that.
Mhm. Yeah, agreed. So with that being said, Wolfpack Nation, we'll wrap it up right there. Really, really hope that everybody really enjoyed this defense preview and you feel ready to rock and roll here for August 29th here, especially now that we've gotten through the offense and defensive side here. But what's to come here? So we're going to be starting our NC State football. Probably do a little bit of hot takes, but definitely got our full season predictions coming up here. So make sure to stay tuned. And to make sure you don't miss out on it, what you got to do, hit that subscribe button. If that subscribe button's lit up for you right now, then smash it right now. Do that for us. Really helps support the channel. And also, too, as well, make sure you're notified whenever we release any new content. Plus, also, too, as well, hit that like button, too, as well. That's a huge, big supporting system, too, for us as well. And let us know down in the comments, too, which player you're most excited about on the defensive side of the ball. I'd love to hear that in the comments. And then also, too, make sure to give us a follow at Tuffy Talk Now on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And also, too, as well, check out our amazing Patreon. Our man Ethan here is spitting out 3 videos a week, which is 12 videos a month, plus our members only rumor chat. So 12 videos plus our members only rumor chat, only $5 a month. Make sure to go click the link down in the description down below. Sign up today. Again, ton of value there for only $5 a month. But with that being said, Wolfpack Nation, we will see you all soon. And as always, go Pack, y'all.